learning, loving, and doing. That's how we're going to get through the week. And I'm excited for this school board commissioner round robin that's happening. I'm also on a board, and I know what it's like to have to, you can only have one conversation with one person about a thing. So lots of rules. I have 10 questions here, and I'm going to choose 3 different questions for each of them. Okay. So my first question for you is, well, first of all, hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm well.
That doesn't count as a question.
It doesn't. Okay, but
No, but how are you doing?
I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for making the space and the time.
It is on. You just talk right into it.
Okay.
Yeah, just like that.
Better?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So my first question to you is, I feel like the temperature right now for the school board is really hot. Hot. How are you planning as one of the incoming kind of school board members to kind of lower the temperature a little bit and just get everyone's focus back on just the business of educating our kids?
I love that question. I'm going to start off by telling you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to throw freezing cold water on it. I'm not going to do that. For those of you who are parents, when my kids run crazy high fevers when they're sick, which, knock on wood, is not often.
It's bronze, but okay.
Bronze. But when they do, I've been told by medical experts, which I'm not one of, but I've been told what you need to do is put cool, lukewarm compresses on certain touch points. So back of the neck, behind the ears. You can't do anything so drastic. Like if you were to put them in a bathtub with very cold water, it could actually cause febrile seizures and other things that would be very, very dangerous. So you're going to learn quickly. I'm a big fan of like analogies because that's how my brain works. But I think what we need to do to cool down the temperature is slow things down, engage in meaningful, transparent conversation, really think about governance, because if as a body we are not governing well, we're not going to be able to get through and do effective, meaningful work. So I think the start is by engaging with one another, thinking and speaking to each other kindly like adults, with compassion and understanding that at the end of the day, our focus has to be first and foremost the students. And I don't have a base. I do. My base is the students. And to the extent that there's wedge issues that are going to get that temperature up, I'm not interested in it. I don't think we're going to be effective that way.
Love to hear it. Just a follow-up question on that. When you said the importance of is governing well, what would that look like to you? What would a school board that's governing well look and feel like? What would that mean?
Yeah, so I think that there's sort of 2 parts to that. One is the internal governance, how we as a commission, as a board are governing and how we're engaging with one another, how we're being thoughtful, how we're being transparent in what our goals and agenda items are. And we're actually we have a closed session meeting tomorrow that's just on governance. Like that's the whole meeting is just on how to engage as a group and how to be really thoughtful and intentional about when we're going to put forward resolutions, for what reasons and why. So I think that's like the internal, how to adult and get through hard topics, because we're not all going to agree. And that's okay. And I think if we did, we probably would be doing a disservice to the students and the families and educators. I think sort of looking outwards, governance looks like transparency. It looks like people understanding what decisions are, like, what does a board do? What do we not do? What is our role in the system? What is our role vis-a-vis the staff, vis-a-vis the school sites, vis-a-vis the students and the educators and the community? So really understanding and being able to let folks know this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing this. If there's questions, being able to respond to them again with like, if the answer is I don't know, I want to be able to say I don't know and here's why. So I think that transparency is key. I guess the other thing I would mention, and this I think relates to both looking internally and externally, is I'm a big fan of consensus. So I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm an immigrants' rights lawyer, and it's very adversarial a lot, but it can't always be that way. And so we have students that come into our space. So I co-teach the immigrants' rights clinic at Stanford, and I do a mixture of lawyering and also teaching and mentoring. And they're like, yeah, let's like stick it to them. Let's go. And that doesn't always work well. Like there's a time and a place for that, but really thinking about how do we listen? How do we engage in a consensus building plan? Because at the end of the day, even if we ultimately don't agree on the final result, if the process felt like it was one where folks were heard and respected, we're just going to be in a much better place.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah. Tell me about your education journey. What was a highlight and a low light for you going through your own education?
Yeah, so I'm a public school kid, now adult, through and through. That's from elementary through high school, I went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Go Tar Heels, who are playing right now. So this is to say how committed I am here.
I
thought
that game was this week.
It's today. It's
the
happening
UNC
right now.
Duke game. Didn't that just happen?
No, that's not the final. That was the semifinal.
Okay.
The final
I did
is-
watch that.
Yes,
I did.
Yes. But I went to Carolina for undergrad, and then I went to Carolina for law school. And I was really fortunate to live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, get in-state tuition at a phenomenal public school. So I feel like that for me was a highlight, that I had access to this amazing, high quality public education, which meant I could move out to San Francisco now 16 years ago and take on a job that I wanted without worrying about being saddled with debt. Low light. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's like
Is that, I feel like that's
it's a nice way of saying like what good wasn't good.
Yeah.
You know,
so
like a poopsicle popsicle kind of.
oh, I've never heard of that one, but okay.
A toot or a boot.
So I have a twin, and we are very, very, very different. And he came out as queer in high school, and he identifies as trans. And I watched the two of us experience and I have permission to share his story, but I watched the different experiences that he had, even in Chapel Hill, which was like this liberal mecca of North Carolina, and the challenges. And despite having an incredibly supportive family and being in an area which, I think Jesse Helms was like, put a fence around it. It was a zoo, and that was a compliment for us. But seeing the disparate treatment that he got just because of his identity was a low light. I mean, he is like, we are twins. He is my person. And so that felt like that hurt. It shouldn't happen to him. And I see now, like, we're watching the horrible things happen in places like Florida and Texas. And I just like that, it brings up a little bit of it's not my trauma, but it brings up some real sad feelings for me.
Got it. And my last question for you, and then we'll have time for one or two audience questions before we go to the next school board member.
So quick.
Is how can we make sure that the teachers that teach the kids in our public school system can afford to live here? And do you think that's even something that the board should be involved in? And if you were able to do something, what would you do?
Love the question. So still like wrapping my head around like what I can do, what I can't do. And this is why we are separate, because I'm actually on the Personnel and Labor Committee, which I'm very excited about. And my colleague is also on that one with me, which is why we keep in the same space for questions like this. But I think, I think we need to pay our teachers more. I think that.
Can I just ask, if this is okay, how much do teachers in our public school system make roughly?
So as I understand, I don't know if there's any teachers in the audience, but as I understand it really depends on your tenure in the district.
Like, what's the range? Is it like, so it's not like no teacher makes like above like 120 or anything? Not even 100. The fringe,
the benefits.
Yeah, but base salary, like no teachers making more than 90. Yeah, I'm talking about San Francisco. Got it. Okay, thank you. This audience knows what the hell is going on. Great.
Collective answers. I love it.
We're all asking and answering at the same time, which is good. Okay, so that honestly seems low to me.
No, it is low. And we look at the cost of living in San Francisco, it's low. And these are not, these are jobs that are critical jobs. And if you think about, we're sort of in this frantic, frenetic, I think you, Precious, used the word frenetic earlier, mode, and what's happening to our kids and why are so many students leaving? Well, teachers are leaving as well. Did you just make the point about Going to San Mateo?
Yeah.
Okay. Teachers are leaving as well. If we don't have quality teachers that are committed and able to come to work without worrying about rent or other financial insecurities, they're not going to be able to do their job. If you tell me I have to go to work and I have this incredible financial burden, stress on my shoulder, I guarantee you I'm not going to be present for my teaching or for my clients. And it's real. So if we talk about, we need to center and focus on student outcomes, on taking care of students, we need to support the educators. I mean, we have families that are sort of the first educators, caregivers and parents, but like the teachers are, my kids see their teachers sometimes more than they see me in a week. So we have to be elevating and respecting the incredible work that our educators are doing.
And I don't expect you to be able to answer this now, but how can we pay our teachers more when the district is $100 and something million in the hole already, right? 125 million. It's like, that sounds great, but if we're already operating at, we need to find cost savings of $120 million, paying the teachers a lot more. It'll make it easier for them to live here, but doesn't fix that problem.
It certainly doesn't, and it doesn't fix it right now. I mean, the good news, there is an interim budget that was passed and a final budget that was passed is our first meeting. So we are now sort of salient and not at risk of immediate takeover by the state, which is a good thing. But the reality is there were hard cuts made and cuts to school sites, which is like the idea of cutting instruction and at school sites it feels like the opposite of what we need to be doing. And so I think we need to be thinking proactively and forward looking. One of the reasons we are not in a good position is because of this exodus of students. And so how do we change that? How do we say like, no, we have this amazing San Francisco Unified School District, which I actually believe we do. It's a little bit of a hot mess currently, but not all of it. But how do we change and reorient ourselves and get excited instead of saying, well, we have, there's 25% that are going to, or 30% that are going to private schools. Okay, we have 70% that are staying in public schools. And how do we, in a year and a half, 2 years, get that up to 80 and not stop? And I want to be clear when it comes to private and parochial and charter, I am not in the business of shaming. I understand that parents have to make very, very hard decisions about where to send their schools. And I am not going to do any type of second guessing about what one parent thinks is best for their child. But what I do want to make sure is that if a parent is leaving because they're concerned that their kid is not going to be in a safe place getting excellent quality education, that's then my problem. Now, if there's another reason they want to go to another school, okay, like again, do your thing because it's your child and you know best. But I do think we need to flip the script. We need to get people excited about the district. We have fantastic educators. We have fantastic programs. So if we could focus on the positive, sort of that asset framing, that asset building, I think sort of like if you build it, they will come. It's already built. We need some, it's built, but we need to sort of reinforce that foundation.
Got it. I think we can do one question before we move on to the next member. Go ahead. And then there'll be more opportunities for audience questions. I'll make sure to bop around. So let's go question for you. And then Lainey is next, correct? Yeah. So I just need to repeat the question for folks that are tuning in on Zoom. And I know it was a statement and a question, but just to summarize the question, this individual in the front has a kid at Everett Middle School. The experience has been less than satisfactory, considering pulling the kid out. And the question really is, what do you hope to be able to accomplish on this board to be able to change the situation so that the kids are receiving a higher quality education at these schools?
Yeah.
Is that
Yes.
brown and black
Yep.
kids? Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Got it. Let's give the member an opportunity to
Yeah.
answer, and then we do need to move to the next board
Okay.
member.
And you're going to love Lainey because she's just brilliant and smart and knows all things. But I so appreciate your question, and I think it is of critical importance. And one of the things, there's sort of three things that I'm really focused on: excellence in education, equity in education, and process. And all of that has to be student centered. And as it relates to the equity piece, I think that the word equity has been abused. It has become sort of this code word to mean things that it doesn't actually mean, to appease some folks, to set some other folks off. I don't think it's controversial. For me, equity is making sure that every student has access to the resources that they need to succeed. And that is going to be different because even with my two children, they learn differently and from each other. And so it's got to, I know that individualized education, like not every student is going to have one teacher per student. I understand that. But the idea that the Black and brown students have disproportionately high rates of suspension and disproportionately low rates of getting through the A through G requirements is offensive and nonsense. And so I think that what we need to be thinking about when we're looking at programming is how are we making sure that all kids, no matter what background they're coming from, have an opportunity to succeed. And that might be different resources and different programs for different kids. And I'm fine with that. That is what equity is about. It's about access. Easier said than done, I get that. But I think that we need to center our conversations around when we're talking about equity, not using it as a buzzword, but saying, what is the through line to the students? Every decision that we make, for example, a budget decision, what is the through line to the students? How has it impacted the students? And how is this impacting equity and the ability to succeed no matter where you are living at home or the color of your skin? I've seen sort of, I know that this is real and it has got to be addressed. And I think the other reason why it is so important that we all get on board with this is that if the student A sitting next to student B and student A is not succeeding, that's not good for student B. But if student A is succeeding and doing better, all of the kids in the class, it's sort of that all boats shall rise. It is good for all of us. And so I think this has to be something that we are absolutely focused on in every decision that we make.
All right, let's give a round of applause to Lisa. And Lisa, I will just say as you leave, it's public service. You have chosen to serve at probably a high watermark or low watermark, one watermark for the school board. And thank you for your service to the city.
Thank you. And I
Appreciate
look forward to learning and working with you all.
All right. Bye, Lisa. And now Lainey's coming to the stage. And Lisa, Precious can escort you out. Hi, Lainey. Where is Lainey? There she is. Yes. Let's just hope it doesn't turn out. Yeah. Hi. Welcome to the stage.
and I'll am I
Right. Yeah.
Am
Just
I
right
good?
into microphone, right into the mouth. Oh no, it's on. Yeah.
okay.
There
Hello?
it is.
Hello.
Can you hear her? Yes.
Everything good? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So the way we've been doing this is 15, 20 minutes each. I have 3 questions for you, 1 or 2 audience questions, and then we'll move on to the third and final member of the school board. So thank you very much for doing this. Appreciate it on a Monday night, and thank you for serving the city and the students. My first question to you is, what does an ideal education system look like in your eyes? What do you think is an ideal system in terms of outcomes and in terms of what it does for a student?
Oh wow, that's a huge question.
We only got 15 minutes. We got to get right into it.
Yeah. So I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry. Specifically with a public school system like the one that you're running. It's not like colleges and universities, but
okay.
SFUSD.
Well, I guess I'm going to answer specific to SFUSD. So for me, success will be regardless of what school a child goes to in this city, that they're getting the same access, that it's an understandable access to education, enrichment, it's clearly communicated, there's early interventions, there's supports, and they can continue on throughout the system, and that there's also threads of opportunity to meet them where their aspirations are, whether it's arts, athletics, academics, and it's easily understood and accessible, both for the student themselves as well as for the families. And frankly, like one of the best outcomes that I can imagine is that every single family in the city considers SFUSD as a potential great fit for their child when they look at the options.
Love that.
Yeah.
When I was in 9th grade, I was in yeshiva. I was in a parochial school. And Mrs. Frew, she was my English teacher, saw that I wanted more. I loved reading. And I think at one point I asked her if there were any books that I could read. And she basically created a separate curriculum for me of books that would not have been acceptable to teach at this yeshiva because they asked big questions. And I would meet her after school and we had like our own little book club. And one of the books was Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and it inspired me to actually apply to transfer out of yeshiva, leave the Orthodox Jewish education system, and go to a secular private school because I realized that I wanted more. I'm not choking up. I actually just had something in my throat. Anyway, she changed the course of my life completely with that, and it course corrected me in a way that I'm still feeling today. So my question to you is, who were some of your education mentors? Is there a teacher or two that really affected, your educational journey and the woman that you've become today?
I come from a family of educators. And so Siddhartha was on our bookshelf because my mom was an English major, and our home was full of literature and the things that she kept from college and just out of her own personal interest. So, and my dad is a chemical engineer by training, and he is now a professor, and my stepdad is a retired elementary school teacher. So the people that raised me and I was surrounded by were educators and people for a passion for learning and curiosity. And I remember my mom, when I got to college, I remember really struggling and not, or even before that in high school, like there would be assignments where I'm like, I don't want to do this assignment. I don't like this assignment. And she would say, make it your assignment. Then pitch the idea that you want to see. And she's like, teachers are working hard and they're doing the best they can, but they take the load off of their plate. If there's things you're interested in, bring them to them. And so that helped that totally changed my approach as I got more agency and a sense of self in how I wanted to learn and what I was interested in learning in. And that has carried me through. Like, if you look at my background, a lot of people are like, oh, what's the through line? Because I've worked in nonprofit, I've worked in government, I've worked in business, I've been an active community volunteer with so many different parts of the city that I love and I believe in. And part of that has been kind of this approach to the education is at a certain point, it becomes self-driven. Like you're saying, like when you get ideas presented to you. It's what you do with them and how you approach them and how it changes the course of your life and sends you on like a journey of continuous learning and curiosity. So
amazing. Thank you for that. That must have been, I just wonder what your dinner time conversations were in a house full of educators. My mother was a lawyer, so it was very argumentative.
that too.
I felt like I was opposing counsel even when I was like 9 years old. I'm like, why we gotta fight? It's Shabbat, don't yell at me. But that's a whole nother conversation. What are you gonna be looking for in a new superintendent? Because you haven't chosen one yet. There's budget cuts, financial stability of the system, increasing enrollment. There's so many big problems of facing the district. You are a board member. You're not, administrator. So what are you going to be looking for in the right superintendent?
There's several qualities, but first and foremost, it obviously needs to be someone that's going to be managing our budget really carefully, but also first and foremost, like the job right now, I feel as a board member and as a leader of the district coming in paid to be the full-time person to run this district is to restore trust in our district and to develop predictability and understanding of what's going on, to look at data, to communicate the data, to think about student performance for all of our kids, and most especially the ones that we have been continuing to fail for a really long time. And so that involves managing a budget. It involves working with our educators, our students, and families. It also involves being an administrator and putting systems in place to look at what is happening at our school sites and being present and visible. And honestly, that person needs to be able to say no and needs to be able to work in contentious environments that I am sad to say that we find ourselves in. And so part of it will be really focusing on getting back to the basics, the basics of what we're tasked to do, which is to be a district focused on educating students, early ed, all the way through 12th grade.
Awesome. Can I get a bonus question before we go to the audience?
Sure.
Because you've touched on this already a bit with that answer, and as well the question about mentors. What do you think is the right balance between administration and teachers in the classroom?
For the superintendent or
for the district?
Oh.
And part of it too is, we've already talked a little bit about paying teachers more and living in the city, and you have a certain amount of classroom size, and then you have an administration. Do you have just general thoughts about, like, do you think the administration is too big, or is it the right size? Do you think we have enough teachers, not enough teachers, the right amount of teachers, we just need to pay them more? I mean, I know it's a tough question to answer, but do you have general thoughts on that?
I'd say that that's an area that I'm learning a lot, like that I'm spending a lot of time getting up to speed and understanding exactly what looking at enrollment. Where is our enrollment? Because some areas are over capacity, some areas are under capacity, but also aligning. I'll give you an example to answer that question: curriculum and instruction. So there's a role for central office in curriculum and instruction, but there's also a role for partnership with educators and getting feedback about how the curriculum and instruction is, and to normalizing across sites. So again, to my earlier point, regardless of what school your child is going to attend, there's an understandable baseline of expectations. So I'm not quite ready to answer the question definitively that you asked, but it's definitely, as we move through the budget and make decisions around student-centered decisions, those kinds of questions are going to be at the forefront.
Yeah, I ask it because, and it's hard because there's what the media is portrayed about this board and all the work that actually gets done that the media is not portraying, right? I can't think of another public body that's had more scrutiny than the San Francisco Board of Education over the last 2.5 years. And so the fact that I know that board member Collins, pushed to get a LGBT parents advisory council that had something like $400,000 or $500,000 fiscal impact on the fact that I even know that is kind of insane, but these are the stories that were being told. And from what I hear, that would have been like 5 more teachers that the district could have hired in classrooms. And so when you read that, even someone who's a layperson like me, and I'm not in education, I'm like, that seems like a lot of money for, is that really necessary? So I guess it's, how are you going to make those decisions?
So here's something I'm grappling with right now. The Board of Education is a governing board. We are not a legislative board, where we're not meant to be. We're not a judicial board, but we've been operating for years as a legislative board. And so there's been, in my opinion, a lot of noise, a lot of shiny objects that have been placed upon the district that have been additive to just the basic core services. And so it's been very difficult to assess what is getting in the way of the core services being delivered, because there's been so many distractions created. So one of the things that I'm really focused on is minimizing the number of resolutions that come in through the board, and working internally. Like it was spring break for SFUSD this last week, and I spent a lot of that reaching out to staff and speaking with staff about things that are upcoming on board agendas. So it's relevant. I'm not trying to like manage their work, but I want to be an informed board member, because things should not be coming as resolutions. They should be coming in partnership with staff. And if there's issues where staff isn't, able to stand up something, then let's work on that. But for me as a board member to be introducing resolutions with a bunch of money attached, cost and staffing attached to it, is a distraction from actually being able to assess the work of the district.
All right, let's get a question from the audience.
And I'm a total policy nerd, so.
Sure. Go ahead. The question is, what does it mean, equity in education? What does that mean to you?
So I think
you're getting all the hard ones.
Am I don't know. I couldn't hear outside. So that I think that connects to the answer to the first question, where regardless of what school you're going to, you're going to be getting similar services, similar curriculum, similar opportunities. But it also has to do with not just creating systems where we feel like, oh, this amount of this kind of person is in the school and this amount of that kind of person is in the school. So therefore, like, box checked, we're done. It's diversity, and now we can just walk and student achievement is done. We've been doing that for a really long time in the city, focused on diversity in our schools, and it's not been translating to academic achievement that I've been able to ascertain or be able to see. And so equity has more to do, like, for instance, if there's a problem with readiness for Lowell, if we have a problem with academic achievement being a threshold for someone to enter a school, and we're noticing that there's parts of our student body or parts of schools, for instance, where kids are not prepared, then that's an equity issue. And that's a pipeline issue. That's an issue with early intervention. That's an issue with academic instruction throughout the whole process. So to me, equity is that every kid has a fighting chance and is able to get the access to supports and interventions to meet their aspirations and to, get to where they want to go.
Love that. Let's do one more. And looks like the questioner likes it too. Let's get one last question for you, and then we'll have Anne next. Hello, Anne.
All right.
So Tina's question.
Yeah.
So Tina's question for those tuning in online.
Mhm.
is about a potential pot of money that's sitting in City Hall for education that isn't being used for education.
So it's called excess ERAF. And do you remember what ERAF is? It's education, something. Yeah. Okay. So ERAF, I can't remember what it stands for. It's education something RA funds. Yeah. So so basically that is state legislation about how our property tax revenues that are ostensibly captured for education funding are collected and sent to the city. So I'll just talk about San Francisco. So they're sent to city and county of San Francisco. The state determines baseline funding per student funding that is that needs to be allocated to a district. Once you've achieved that, it's considered excess ERAF. So if you have additional property tax revenue that's been collected for paying your public schools, but it exceeds what the state determines as the baseline, then that becomes a general fund source for a city and county. And because we have such high property taxes in San Francisco, we exceed by millions of dollars the amount of ERAF funding. And so, yeah. And so we have, there's been a couple occasions where the city has made determinations to send some portion of it back to the district, but that's been on like a year by year basis. And I believe there was a resolution passed by the Board of Supervisors a few 3 to 4 years back where they actually, and this is non-binding, but they earmarked 50% of excess ERAF for affordable housing. So there's a lot of tension on what to do with that excess funding that comes in ostensibly for schools, but can be directed by the general fund. And did I lose like everyone in this room?
No, that was
Okay.
interesting.
Okay.
I see the question, but we got to move to the next one because we only have 17 minutes. So if you have time, maybe afterwards you can answer that question. But let's move to Anne now, and let's everyone thank Lainey. Appreciate it. And Lainey, as you leave, I'll just say this is a public service that you're providing to the schools, and I see Sharkey is the president of the Small Business Commission, and I'm on the SFMTA board. These are both bodies that require a lot of time, effort. I know you have a life outside of it, so thank you for all the hard work that you're putting into the school district. Really appreciate it.
And I love this.
Oh,
You for,
thanks.
Thank you for just being Manny. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. School board member number 3, round robin style. We got Anne. This is moving. We should do all of our panels like this to just keep it going. Hi, Anne. How you doing? Oh, nice to meet you. Love it. You've got your Post-it note. Amazing. So I think you may have, just bring it right up to your mouth.
Okay. My name tag is because I just came from the Student Advisory Council meeting.
How did it go?
Oh, it went well. There's like
What is that? Is that like, what is that?
it's the Student Advisory Council to the SFUSD. It's a bunch of students, about 50 of them across all the 15 or 16 high schools. And they meet every week. I couldn't believe they meet every week, Monday.
Wow.
From 6 to 8. I was invited to go and say hello to them and meet some of them. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, we have a community advisory council, a CAC, so it's probably something like that. What do you want to have accomplished by the end of your tenure on the school board?
Well, I hope my tenure is 4 years plus the rest of this year.
Okay.
And
Love
not
that.
just the rest of this year.
Oh, is there going to be an election then?
Yes,
Oh.
Manny, you didn't know that?
Oh, more elections, just what we want right now. I somehow, my brain, there's just so much going on right now. So your tenure, 4 years after the end of this year, yes. What do you hope to accomplish?
Well, I hope to have, not I, but I, along with this Board of Education Commissioners and the district new superintendent, I hope we will have turned this ship from where it's heading now or for the past few years to a direction that's really, as Lainey has said earlier, focusing on education, just back to the basics, of giving everybody a solid education so that they can explore the rest of their lives.
Amazing. I like that. What do you guys think about that? Tell me about yourself a little bit. What motivates you? Who are you? And why the hell did you decide to say yes to this? What is wrong with you?
Very good questions. So I'm Anne. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Beijing, China, and immigrated to Erie, Pennsylvania. Anybody here heard of Erie, Pennsylvania? Really?
Wait,
My God,
what?
why? Well, yeah.
How did
what?
you all? I was gonna say like cue the crickets. How do you all know about Erie? What's Erie?
Exactly. How do you all know about? No, not quite.
Are these
Amish.
plants? Did you plant these people?
Oh,
wow.
well, good, good. My God, oh my God.
Okay, so you're in the
Okay,
right room.
Erie is what taught me English. I didn't speak English when I landed in Erie. It was a community of 250,000 people with 40 Chinese people. So I learned English. Spent 10 years, middle school, high school, and college in Pennsylvania, and then came out to Berkeley for graduate school. And I'm a engineer by training, electrical engineers, programmed software, and worked in Silicon Valley for 20 years, including co-founding a .com in 1999 in the original .com boom.
Did it have a fun
bust.
name like, who'sywhatsits.com or something?
No, it had a very intuitive name. We did online competitive intelligence. We watch your rivals. It's called rivalwatch.com.
Rivalwatch.com.
We watch your rivals. Our customers were Amazon, Walmart, Staples, Home Depot, Lowe's, these kind of retailers who are competitors of each other. So we built software to grab all the products and pricing information from their websites, brought it back, processed them. We were doing big data before it was called big data.
And so when you got this call from the mayor's people to serve on the board, what was your first thought about that? And what was it a hard decision for you?
Well, there's a few more steps before I got the call from the mayor. No, 20 years in high tech, and then I got a little tired of high tech and decided to go make yogurt. So I made yogurt for 5 years in far western China because I was tired of high tech. I wanted a new life experience, and this directly answers your last question: is why am I doing this? Because I want a new life experience. I want to learn something new, and I want to apply my knowledge and experience from business, from entrepreneurship, from technology to a new field.
What aspects of the yogurt farming do you feel like you're going to be bringing into the school board?
Let me tell you, that venture actually is the closest I've had in addressing diversity. So my yogurt company is based in Xinjiang, China, which is far western China where the Uyghurs are. My business partner was Uyghur. And China, everybody looks like me. It's 94% Han Chinese people and 6% of 55 other ethnic groups. One Han is 94%, and then 55 others only comprise 6%. And in Xinjiang, where our yogurt factory was, it was majority minority. The only place, probably the only place in China. So working there was the only place in China that had to deal with a diverse population of completely different culture. So in terms of working environment, Silicon Valley is actually not that diverse.
And not to get, well, let's keep moving. There's so much more I would want to talk about with that. But my final question to you for this, and then I want to give the audience some opportunity in our last 10 minutes, is what do you think is the greatest issue facing the school district today? And what do you think the board can do to solve it?
I think the biggest issue is that we're not focusing on education for kids. We're failing the ones who failed, who need help in these focal groups in the underserved communities. And we're also failing the high achievers by taking away opportunities for them. So we're failing everybody right now. So I hope that we can turn that ship around.
And is this a board that can actually do something about that?
Yes, we can.
How?
Well, you got three of us
Okay.
who I'm very honored to have gotten the call from the mayor. I think we are parents. We have a stake in this system because we have kids. Mine are in high school. Lainey's in middle school. Lisa's in elementary school. So we know what it feels like to raise kids in SFUSD. And we see, actually, I looked at all the, for the year of distance learning, I had my son's login and I looked at all the 6 classes that he took in 9th grade. I know what he's learning and how he's learning.
Wait, does he know that you're doing that?
Yes,
Okay.
because he wasn't doing it. And he was failing because of distance learning. He didn't care. I said, give me your login. Let me look. And then after the 6 hours of just Zooming and video gaming, then I sat him next to me and I did work with him, not for him, with him. And it took a lot of time, and that's why I'm involved, because that needed to change. I forgot your question.
No. It was, you know, what can the board actually
Oh,
do
yeah,
about it? I
yeah.
know it's hard because, again, not to keep bringing
So-
up my own board, you know, membership, but I'm on the SFMTA board, and people are constantly coming to me and saying, you know, there's an RV in front of my house, or I just got a ticket, or my parklet is broken. And I'm like, well, I cannot fix that, but I can forward an email.
So let me tell you, I'm very encouraged because our board president, President Lamb, is organizing a lot of training for the board members, which I welcome because I know nothing about education board. But what I learned from that person who's going to lead our discussion this coming week about education board, he tells me it's actually not very different from corporate boards. I said, oh, I know how that's run, right?
Great.
That it should be run more like a corporate board. And says, you know, what happens when your customer calls you as a board member that there's something wrong, the parklet in front of it. Do you go fix it? No, I send it to the CEO. You go fix it. Right? It's a customer service issue.
100% love that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't get involved. And if the CEO can't fix it after, you know, it becomes a systemic problem, time to fire the CEO.
All right. Anne, let's give you the first question since you had a question for Lainey but weren't able to ask.
I'll speak in corporate terms. I think a company should have a good product first, and then marketing should do its job. So we need to make our product better. As I said, get back to education, right? So that we can do it well for the K through 3, build a good foundation, and then later as they get to high school, have many more different options than just college. That room full of high school students I just met before, they're all going to college. And then when I started talking about it, some of them about other options, they said, oh, thank you so much for saying that, because it feels like college like the only option, which it should not be. So if we just build a better product, okay, have our school actually do education right, and then our marketing department needs to go and tell those parents who are thinking about private schools, hey, you can actually get this for free, right? But we have to build a good product first. Otherwise, marketing is not going to be able to do its job.
All right, we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Go ahead. Which I forgot about.
How can you build relationships strategically with people who are on the current board?
You know, I'm very far from a politician. I didn't even work in large companies enough to do politics in there. I was an entrepreneur. I started a couple of companies. So politics is not in my nature, but I believe that if I connect with someone sincerely and that person really believes that I have the best interest of the company or the students or the school district in mind, even if we disagree. Actually, I had shouting matches with my co-founder, .com. All the employees outside of the conference room were listening to us. And after we shouted and discussed, we made a decision and then come out and we do the business. It's because it's not personal. It's we just have different ideas and different solutions for the problem that we're discussing. So I believe that I don't think of, oh, if I work with this person for this one, maybe the next one, he or she will vote with me. I don't think in those terms. I just want to be sincere and get to know that person, each one of these board members. We actually already had a chance to meet one-on-one with them. And I think I connected with them individually, some more than others. That's how I work. I don't think in political strategy terms. I think it's too late for me to learn.
Okay, learning at every age though, right?
Well, some things I recognize that I don't know. Some things I decide to learn, some things I decide not to learn.
Love it. Let's get one more question over there in the back.
It is not, because at the time that we were appointed, that has not passed yet. So it will not affect us. But anybody, if it passes in June, anybody who gets appointed afterwards will not be able to run for election.
I see. That was a short question. So last one will be Naomi. For Zoom, one of the big hot topics is changing the Lowell school admissions to be merit-based again. What is the timeline and the strategy on that?
I think that is up to President Lam to decide the timeline, but my personal opinion is that it definitely needs to be restored ASAP. And then on top of that, we need to look at it and to see if we can tweak it, modify it to better serve all of the students. But it should be from that basis that we modify, not from the current lottery basis.
And very good. Abraham Lincoln,
What about him?
thoughts? Is he? Are we a yes on Abraham Lincoln or?
Changing his name?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, that passed my test. Awesome. As I said to you, you're two. It's funny we're laughing about it, but that actually was what happened a year ago.
Somebody answered yes.
No. I'm saying that your predecessors wanted to change it. And some of your current.
Well, so actually, whether it should be changed or not should be a community discussion. Okay, but definitely not at the time when pandemic should have been the only priority that we had. So we can discuss renaming at a more opportune time.
Love that. Like I said to the two others, you could be doing lots of things, probably starting more companies. Maybe you are starting more companies, but you are choosing to serve the students of the city and the city as a whole. And so on behalf of everyone here, I thank you very much for that service. We appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
And now Precious will take us home and close this out, and you and I can leave the stage.